Okay, can you hear me now? Oh, but I can't hear you because you're muted.
Hi.
Hi, Erica. Hi, Lindsay.
Hi, guys. I'm on here twice, I think, because my...
And we're back.
Okay, good evening, everybody, and thank you for your patience as we worked out some technical difficulties. Welcome to the Amherst Design Review Board meeting of June 15th, 2026. My name is Erica Zikos, and as the chair of the Amherst Design Review Board, I'm calling the meeting to order at 4:41 p.m. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available via the Town of Amherst YouTube channel, and minutes are being taken. The meeting is conducted via remote means pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2025, extended through June 30th, 2027, the ability of public bodies to meet in a fully remote or hybrid manner. Members of the public who wish to access the meeting may do so via Zoom or by telephone. No in-person attendance of members of the public will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access the proceedings in real time via technological means. A hyperlink to the hearing is posted on the town's online calendar. Board members, I will take roll call. When I call your name, please let me know that you're here. Lindsay Schnarr.
Here.
Karin Winter. Not present. Pat Oth. We know Pat is present but is having audio trouble. Karen Blum. And Erica Zikos, present. Board members, if technical issues arise, we may need to pause temporarily to fix the problem and then continue the meeting. If the discussion needs to pause, it will be noted in the minutes. Please use the raised hand function to ask questions or make a comment. I will see your request and call on you to speak. After speaking, remember to remute yourself. The general public comment item is reserved for public comment regarding items that are both on and not on tonight's agenda. Please be aware that the board will not respond to comments during the comment period. Public comment could also be heard at other times during the meeting when determined appropriate. Please indicate that you wish to make a comment by clicking the raised hand button when public comment is solicited. If you've joined the Zoom meeting using a telephone, please indicate that you wish to make a comment by pressing *9 on your phone. When called on, please identify yourself by stating your full name and address and put yourself back into mute when finished speaking. Residents can express their views for up to 3 minutes or at the discretion of the chair. And if a speaker does not comply with the guidelines or exceeds their allotted time, their participation will be discontinued from the meeting. At tonight's meeting, the board will conduct the following business. We'll have general public comment period. We don't have any applicants tonight, but we are going to kind of skip forward to discussion of the downtown design standards. Then we'll approve our meeting minutes from April 27th, 2026, and any other non-anticipated business. So, is there any public comment? Please let us know that you'd like to speak.
I don't have anyone in the attendees list that wants to speak.
Okay, and the new number, is that Pat or is it?
I'm not sure, but that was the same number from earlier, so I'm guessing it's Pat. So I've tried to promote her to panelist, but
Okay.
I guess when you're on the phone, it doesn't let you actually promote them. It just says allow to speak.
And can you set that permanently since we were having a hard time hearing Pat before?
I think it's permanent until I disable it. So she should be able to speak if she's here. Pat, can you
That's you. Because without Pat's participation, we don't have a quorum.
Yeah.
We could have a discussion without any votes, which is certainly possible.
Pat? Yeah, she's on here twice, it looks like.
Okay. All right, well, barring any public comment. I'd just like to maybe give a reminder to the board for the record about what our goal is in this discussion. As you know, the proposed downtown design standards are a 3-volume set. Volume 1 kind of sets the stage and describes 4 different zoning areas and provides a sense of the character of each. And those proposals respond to residents' concerns about growth. This is also like the residents, the vision for Amherst is kind of driven by some community inspired values. Those are laid out in Volume 1. Volume 2 focuses on private development in the downtown, and it sets dimensional and character standards for the 4 different design zones. And Volume 3 is about the public way. It focuses on sidewalks and street furnishings, plantings, and access to the street, etc. So my goal for the discussion is threefold. 1, to provide some feedback to the town about whether these standards in our idea are moving in the right direction or not. In other words, do we approve of them in general, even if we have suggestions about some or many of the details? Second, to get into those details. For Volume 2, we can talk about our concerns about dimensional standards, about building character, et cetera, et cetera. We should have gone through the document so we can take turns sharing our questions and comments. And then for third, I note that these design standards are very different from what the DRB is accustomed to using as a framework for review. And I'd like to have a discussion about the role of the DRB should these standards be adopted. We may propose to the town council that the DRB become a binding decision-making body rather than a recommending one, for example. And we can have that conversation tonight. And I know that we started it in our last meeting, and that there was a kind of a general interest in having a firmer hand and being a binding decision-making body. But let's carry on that conversation this evening. So I guess one of the first questions, if I could propose it as a starting point for the conversation, is: does anybody have questions about the overall structure of the standards volumes? Questions or comments about that?
By the way, I'm sorry I'm late. I was in the hospital, so.
Oh, Karen.
Hi.
Hi. We're so glad you're here.
Yeah, I'm sorry I couldn't get here sooner.
We're glad to have you.
Hope you're okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
So are there any, as we jump in, does anybody have any questions about like the way we'd like to run the conversation tonight?
I'm sorry I missed the discussion. You've proposed a certain way to run it?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I just gave a very high level summary of what the 3 volumes of the proposed design standards cover.
Yeah.
And suggested that we might start with a conversation about whether we think that the standards are moving in the right direction or not. Basically, do we think that Volume 1 addresses the community values and concerns that we feel that should be included? Is the overall format of the document working? And then to move on to kind of deeper discussion about the details, the kind of page by page, if that's how you want it.
Well, I don't know. I'm trying to figure. I have it on a different machine. I'm trying to figure it out. Okay.
Karen, your hand just went up.
I know. I figured it out.
Oh, good. Okay.
I appreciated the different sections they created, the different districts. And I think that based on the information they took in. I think they were respectful of some of the concerns, including preserving the historic district, how to manage high rises relative to the other areas of the community. So I thought that was positive. It's very detailed. I guess for me, the question is, what is the council going to do with this?
Mhm. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. Lindsay, do you have any overarching thoughts?
I think it's great. I mean, I think it's really well organized and informative and a great starting point for developing standards that really do seem needed.
Mhm.
I guess same question for me is just like how much, like, what's the process for getting feedback and incorporating the feedback that is gotten, is received, and um yeah, that's my main question.
Yeah, fair. Jacinta, do you have any insights? I could speak to the schedule, only based on what's like published on the website. Do you have any insights about the adoption process?
So from what I was told briefly, it's that they're going to collect everybody's responses around July 1st. They're going to take that time to review those responses, possibly update or change the standards, and then shop them around again so that they're sort of looking at maybe a November, December timeline to go before the town council. Whether or not they do any more sort of like back and forth in between that time, I'm not sure. But I know they're probably going to revise them based on the feedback they're getting from the different boards and commissions.
Mhm, mhm. Okay. And as a reminder, we're having this conversation as a board, but everybody in town, including us as individuals, is welcome to provide feedback either as singular comments or by filling out a spreadsheet if you have lots of comments, and submitting those. And those links can be found on the town planning boards. No, yeah,
Planning department.
the
website.
department's website, not the board's website, right? So, and that's, they're soliciting those by July 1st, so. Karen?
Jacinta, do you have that link handy? And could you
Sure.
put it in the chat if so?
Sure. 1 second.
Yeah, it's a great idea, Lindsay.
I think Karen has her hand up.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I understand they'll be gathering information from the different boards. My question is, how do they solicit information from the community? How does the community get informed in a significant way? Often certain people, certain voices are heard again and again.
Mhm.
And it seems it would be important to expand how we reach out to members of the community. It's just a concern I have because I know there is a very vocal contingency that is interested in high rises.
Mhm.
And it seems we need many voices. Do you have any
Yeah.
idea how they're going to move forward in getting other opinions?
I'm going to try to answer that as diplomatically as I can, only because I brought those same concerns to them last September, and I was sort of, I don't know, dismissed when I raised those concerns. I had asked them if they had planned to reach out to the ADA community, if they had planned to, involve other members of the community that you don't often hear from throughout this process that they had started. And the individual who was representing Dodson and Flinker was, very adamant, oh, I care about these things. And when I saw them 9 months later, this was back in March, when they came back to town with their study, and I point blank asked them in this meeting where, the planning director was there, Dave Zomek was there, and his attitude was very dismissive and very flippant. And I said, well, I had asked you about this, in September, whether or not you were going to engage these communities, engage, members of these populations. And he was like, and I said, did you do this? And he said, no, I didn't. And it was just a flat out dismissive no. And I just remember thinking, okay, so I don't know how to answer your question, because the impression that I was left with was they were given a heads up by town staff. I'm a planner. I don't see why you wouldn't take that directive on board. I'm also the staff liaison for the design review board. So I made those things known to him. But he, was very adamant that, we have a schedule. We didn't work that into the schedule. Therefore, we didn't do it. And I thought, well, that's unfortunate, because isn't that the whole point of the study, is to get.
Right.
I'm saying as much as I can without,
No, I appreciate it.
so
Me too.
I don't know how committed they would be to going and putting in the effort to reaching out to those very same communities that you never hear from, right? Because they can't attend a charrette on a Friday afternoon, or or Saturday morning or whatever, or they don't speak English as their first language, as their primary language. So I asked these questions, and it was
No, I appreciate it. And also, many people don't even know the process is going on or
correct.
the timeline.
Yeah. And the
So-
timeline is now kind of running to a point of closure. Right?
Yes.
So like if voices are missed in this phase, that becomes all the more critical that they be included in the next one, because it's going to be in the lead up to kind of adoption,
Yeah.
But
Yes.
the short answer is I don't think there will be another, right? I don't
Okay.
think there will be, is what I'm trying to say. I just don't see them building that into their schedule. It doesn't sound like they cared very much to pivot the first time around, and I don't think that they're going to pivot this time around either. So yeah. It's disappointing, and it was very frustrating for me as
Yeah.
a planner and as somebody who flagged that very, very early on in the process. But it was not a note that was.
I'm curious, Jacinta, if you have experience with outreach of that type and what's been successful in terms of reaching populations who don't have as much access to this information. And if you have any experience or recommendations of how that could happen, and then maybe that could be a way to take the next step.
I'm sorry. Did you?
You know,
Did you?
Jacinta, is it possible to? Oh, maybe it'll be fixed. There was
No,
one.
I just muted. I don't know who it was, but I just muted them.
We think it's Pat.
Okay.
Okay.
So anyway,
Yeah,
I
so
guess just, I mean, it doesn't have to just be Jacinta, but just brainstorming on ways in which public outreach can be effective. And
Sorry, I just had to remove them because they kept unmuting and it was not helping. Sorry, Lindsay.
That's
Please
fine.
finish.
I think you got my gist.
Yeah. Karen, did you want to?
You know, sometimes
typically, you would, I mean, I've done social science research. That was part of what I did. And you would have information sessions in key locations that are relevant to that community, that part of the community.
Yeah.
And you would have multiple sessions, and you would make sure that there are other ways the information gets out. And it doesn't feel like that's going on.
I think with regards to the locations of meetings, and maybe timing of meetings, that let's see, there was the working group which met more frequently, and then there were a series of public meetings. And I don't know, looking back, when those were held. This process has been going on for a year now, right?
Mhm.
So I think it's really important to be, what's the word I'm looking for? To look at that process with a critical eye to make sure that, I mean, I know that information is on the website and that's accessible if you can find it. And I know
Yeah.
that I've received emails, but of course I'm on boards and committees. So yeah, like how do we maintain an inclusivity in this process? Are there flyers? Are there meetings in the apartments? Are there, yeah, at the churches, right? Like, where are we going to go to find these voices? And I was also under the impression that these design standards were being presented to all of the boards and committees that were relevant.
They were presented after the fact, right? So during the process, the information gathering process, during the community feedback process, those boards and commissions were not presented to. They were not included. I'm trying so hard to walk this fine line between,
Sure.
Saying as much as I can and yet also having my own personal feelings as a planner, but also as someone who
Yeah.
I ride the bus to get to work. So it's so funny, the day that they came to present the studies to the town staff the first time around, it was frustrating because when I had asked that, the team from Dotson and Flinker, if you had engaged the ADA community, if you had talked to other people,
Yes.
etc., and that flippant response, and then 2 hours later, I'm waiting for the bus, and someone who is visually impaired gets off the bus, and they're struggling, and this was when we had snow, and they were fuming, and one of the things they said was, I really hate this town. I heard them say it. They were just so frustrated with everything, and I just thought, these are the people that you should have been gathering information from, right? There's still, unfortunately, this, I think, top-down approach to planning, which I hate to say it, is still being practiced within our department, right? And someone's going to flag that and come after me for saying it, but it's the truth. And no sugarcoating it is going to change the fact that there were voices that were very much left out of this process. So when the effort was not put into meeting those voices where you would normally and traditionally find them, the research wasn't done, the effort wasn't put into it, and yeah, it's been a point of contention for me for a couple of months now. So I've been very tactful about how much I say and what I say, just because this could have been avoided. And it just breaks my heart that we're still doing the same things. And the same people are still at the table, while the same people who aren't usually at the table are still being marginalized and excluded. And I don't think there's any excuse for it at this point. So that's all I'm going to say. And I'm just going to leave it at that because it just makes me really angry, actually.
No, thank you for sharing that, Jacinta. I know that you're choosing your words carefully, but we hear what you're saying. Karen?
I appreciate how frustrating that must be, especially as a planner. And this is probably moot, but another thought would be there are these proposed zones, to talk to the people within those zones and get feedback. But it sounds like that's not going to happen. So just a thought.
I mean,
Well,
I will
and
take everybody's suggestions and put it on paper and forward it along. Again,
Yeah.
that's the most that I can do. I can be very persistent about that, and maybe it'll make a difference if it's coming from someone other than myself. Because I since we're talking about it, the burden for me is always going to be, just because I'm the only representative of a marginalized community at the table, does that mean I'm always the one to carry, who has to bring it up. And I had that internal discussion with myself, even during that meeting. And I said, well, I'm at the table, so I have to do it. That's my duty, and I did it. But again, it's, there are layers for this experience for me as well. But I will pass along everybody's suggestions and recommendations.
Yeah, I mean, you could know that you have the membership of the design review board standing with you and sharing that set of concerns. Like,
Thank you.
we're here alongside. Yeah.
So that should be our first item of feedback, I think,
Yep.
is outreach and hearing voices from underserved populations that may not have access to input.
Mhm.
And what's the method for that? That there needs to be a method for that, not just a yes or no. But
And I think that there's something about, reaching out to the people that in the 4 zones, but I think that the downtown is used by everybody, whether you live in the downtown or not.
Yeah.
That's an important piece of this this community. Most people don't live downtown, so but we still want to feel welcome there. And
Mhm.
I'm also amazed. I mean, I work for a firm downtown Amherst, and like nobody that I work with was even aware that these were available. And like it affects us a lot.
no kidding. Okay.
That's hard to believe.
Yeah,
So I mean, even the
because
people
you're
that
involved in the built
presumably would have access
Yeah.
and should have access and could have access don't seem to know.
So there's something wrong with the process.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Good. I'm glad we opened with a kind of the big picture, because
Mhm.
that may not have come up if we had just jumped into the details. So I'm glad to have that on the record.
Mhm.
So volume 1, the big vision, the 4 proposed zoning areas. We're moving from 3 to 4, so smaller subdivisions of the downtown, traditional Main Street and modern Main Street, downtown village and downtown neighborhood. I'll start off the more detailed conversation by saying that I have a small issue with calling the zones main anything, because we have a main street and relatively little of these 2 zones actually falls along Main Street. And I think that there's just a kind of a semantic issue and nomenclature issue, if you will. And that's hopefully not going to be confusing, but I would reconsider what we call the zones. And I went back and forth for a while in my mind about whether we need to go from 3 to 4, but I appreciate the intent of these like kind of greater degree of subdividing the downtown.
Mm-hmm.
So I think I landed in a place where I'm okay with it.
Are you talking about traditional versus modern Main Street? Is that what you're talking about?
There's traditional Main Street and modern Main, and then downtown village and downtown neighborhood. And I think that what used to be, or what is currently the BG general business area, is kind of now divided into 2, traditional Main and modern Main. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think it's kind of accommodating some changes that have already happened.
Right.
And creating some space for, a limited space where that modern Main language could continue.
Without inserting it into the traditional Main Street,
Right.
which can happen.
Right. Theoretically, now it could happen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So I appreciated that additional zone for that particular reason. Any other thoughts on volume 1, which is not really the focus of our concerns, but I think volume 2 and to some degree volume 3 are really where we get to sink our teeth in.
I guess my only thought is like it's unfortunate that it needs to be as kind of like subdivided as it is, and I'm not saying it shouldn't be, but it just, from a like planning standpoint, design standard standpoint, like there's just there's so many different requirements already when it comes to design, and so it just feels frustrating to think about like, okay, well, which side of the street is it on, and like which lot exactly and why, and it would just be nice if we were able to simplify it more instead of complicate it more, but that's my only thought. It's just like things just continue to get more complicated, it seems, when it comes to zoning and code, and that's hard to manage.
Agree.
I wonder if some of it is they're trying to deal with the current reality and contain what is being
I
used
think
as,
so. Yeah.
and maybe that's why they've described it the way they have, because by having downtown village, in a way, it contains the extent to which modern tall buildings can enter other areas. I mean, that's just a thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, preserving some character as inevitable growth and change happens. Yeah. Yeah. Pat, are you back with us?
I think so. Yes, thank you for whatever you did. I've been listening. I had audio, but I had no video. So I've been at the start of the discussion,
Great.
and I think they're very good questions about this planning.
Are we ready to move on to volume 2, or would you like to offer any comments on volume 1 before we move forward? No? All right. Let's fast forward then to volume 2. And I happen to make notes kind of page by page.
Mm-hmm.
If that works for other people, we certainly can review it that way. It's just kind of going through sequentially with commentary. This is the downtown design standards is applied to private development in the downtown and lays out dimensional standards for those 4 zones so that we can start to have a physical difference in the built environment. I have my first comment is on I think page 10. Does anybody have a comment?
Yeah,
For them?
I have questions about that too.
Karen, you want to start us off then?
Well, I'm just curious, the long-term, in terms of long-term planning, what the reasoning is increasing the height across the 3 zones. Why the increase, I guess, is a question I have. And what are the implications for increasing it in terms of the overall character of the town?
If I remember correctly, and I know we're being recorded, so this is the record, and if my memory is wrong, forgive me, please, but that Modern Maine is currently 55, but that with a variance, they were requested to go higher anyways, which was approved. And so they're just kind of normalizing
I
something
see.
that's been happening.
That happened.
Yeah. No change in the downtown neighborhood, and maybe anticipating the same for traditional Maine. I think my concern is with the downtown village. The height increase from 50 to 50 from 35 is already
Yeah,
a significant step, but they're also permitting with special permit up to 60 as long as there's a step back. And I think that that's, even with the step back, 60 feet is too high
I agree.
in those downtown village areas.
And this is something they can't address, but I'm always wondering for what purpose in terms of their plans. I mean, what are they anticipating that space will be needed for?
It's, if I can just, I mean, from a architectural standpoint, it's floor to floor heights. That would allow for a 5-story, 12-foot floor to floor height.
Yeah.
5-story building, and 12 stories is probably a little more than you would need
Well,
typically, but it's a good amount of space to allow for all the mechanical systems that go between ceiling and roof structure and floor structure. So it's giving like a comfortable amount of vertical space to provide a 5-story building, is really the math behind it.
I see.
Yeah.
Oh,
And-
thank you.
I would argue that in the village, the downtown village zoned areas, 5 stories is too high. I mean, they're along the park and bumping up against properties that are zoned residential. 5 stories to me feels like too much. And I know that they've tried to accommodate it with, stepping back or reducing to 40 feet within 25 feet of the lot line, but there's still implications for neighborhood impact.
I agree.
Modern Maine and traditional Maine are where we had welcomed the taller buildings. All right, moving forward, what's the next page or next section that somebody has thoughts to comment on? Maximum stories.
I think that's kind of related to what you just said, right?
Yeah. The stories, on page 11, the stories doesn't have a similar bullet point for special permit,
No.
assuming that it's there in the building height. Yeah. Karen, please.
Oh, you may not be there yet. I'm on page 14. You may not be there.
No, please, I think yeah, 14 sounds good.
My concern remains parking.
Mm-hmm.
I think that a developer should provide reasonable parking. And my understanding is in the past that hasn't happened. But it is of concern that there's pressure. There are businesses around where their parking spaces are being taken up by residents. And it seems that somehow we should build in the expectation that a developer is responsible for providing that. I mean, Lindsay, is that sort of a standard that if a developer creates a residential building, they provide a certain number of parking spaces?
Typically.
And then with special permit, that can be modified or waived.
Yes.
Yeah.
We do have a parking problem in this town for sure, and this isn't gonna help with that.
No, it's not.
I mean, I love the idea of a walkable, bikeable downtown, but we do live in a 4-season community, so that's not always practical, nor is it welcoming to folks who are coming from outside of the downtown to do business here or have dinner or what have you. I mean, a parking structure might go part of the way towards resolving that issue, but the thing that I always go back and forth on is that parking takes up so much space. So much.
Mhm.
It does, but there's also the issue of financial burden and who has the financial burden as well. That's why I bring up developers being responsible for parking, because otherwise it falls on the town.
Yeah. I think that's,
So Karen and Erica, I have my hand up if I may.
please.
I agree with your comments. I was astounded when some of the new buildings went in the upper part of Amherst downtown, whatever we want to call it, that there was commercial space and there was residential space, and there was no accommodation for parking.
Mhm.
And I think that developers have to have a responsibility to make a certain number of parking spaces available for each unit and for each commercial district, because otherwise, there's lots of conversation that Amherst has a paucity of parking. And I think that's because the new development has not accommodated
Yeah.
parking.
Mhm.
And Karen, I agree, it takes up a lot of space. However, the residents of those buildings, the businesses of those buildings are relying on street parking and other
Yeah.
available
That's
parking.
right.
And so
Yeah.
I don't know how we solve this issue, but I think it is an issue.
Yeah. And I think what we can do is just flag it as a point of, something that we see that the planning board will need to carry on a conversation about.
Right, and waivers are problematic in that regard.
Yeah.
And that's perhaps to flag it to the planning board. When we speak of a garage being built, that's the financial responsibility of the town.
Mhm.
And that becomes a big issue.
Yeah. Yeah, and it may not be one car per unit. Maybe there's a different formula that needs to be developed so that they're providing some significant or some percentage of the
Mhm.
retail and residential needs on site.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
great. Okay, noted. My next comment falls on, I think, pages 18 and 20. Does anybody have anything prior to that?
Mm-mm.
So on 18, regarding frontage and side and rear setbacks, I don't know. I'm trying to get a handle on this. The downtown village, the proposed here is a change to a 50-foot frontage minimum from 125. And I'm wondering if any of the current, what would fall into downtown village lots are subdividable. If we're changing to a 50-foot frontage minimum, but requiring, depending on conditions, a 10 to 15-foot minimum side setback, that leads to a building that's only 20 feet wide. And so we're trying to propose development, and we're trying to make space, make developers see a potential site, right, as useful. That's problematic, and I don't know whether to change the minimum frontage or to change the setbacks. And it's probably not the setbacks, because the village character kind of relies on that space between
Right,
the volumes.
right.
But also noting that the setback can't be used for parking. It can be used for traffic, it can't be used for parking. So now we have all of this space between buildings, and you're then kind of maybe creating a long, narrow volume and having to fit parking in on what might become otherwise useful space. So just noting that.
Mhm.
Anybody else have comments in this area of the document? And Karen, you probably then, and maybe Pat had also comments on page 21, which picks up parking again, where it's
Yeah.
not required.
I just want to comment on setbacks. I appreciate what you're saying. It's a dilemma because many of the buildings, and this pertains more to the modern part, many of the buildings that have gone in do not have adequate setbacks. And it makes it very uncomfortable to move along that space. And it certainly doesn't invite people to, if shops or restaurants are going in, it doesn't invite people to really spend time in the town when setbacks are like that.
Yeah, especially on the front.
Yeah.
There's like no setback, or the sidewalk is also narrow, right? Like these
Very
things.
narrow.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you have a double stroller, you can't do it.
Oh. Yeah. All right. Moving forward, next pages of concern or comments, thoughts. I pick up on page 24. Anyone before then? Okay. Page 24, length of building, and then 25, facade length without modulation. And this also picks up on 26, like roof length without change and bay width. I feel that maximum should scale down more significantly in the downtown neighborhood, something more residential in scale.
Mhm.
I'm seeing 40 feet as the facade length without modulation, and length of building side 150 feet in downtown neighborhood. And that just, this is the zone that they flagged to kind of transition us into residents. And I feel like there's this whole package of dimensions that just feels big for this purpose.
That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I agree.
Did anybody else pick up on any of that or want to add to?
I didn't pick up on that, but I agree with it.
Okay.
Yeah, I do too. I'm trying to understand the waivers because there are a lot of waivers built in throughout. And I guess, maybe that's typical. I don't know. It just concerns me because historically, a lot of things have been excused through waivers. And I guess, I don't know if we can.
Yeah, special permits or waivers are by approval of the ZBA. And so they have to make a proposal. I mean, Lindsay does this all the time for a living, so maybe you want to speak to the process, Lindsay, but it doesn't come automatically. It's not a thumbs up. You have to make a pitch and have a conversation.
I've been turned down.
Okay. Well, it's good to know. Not that you've been turned down, but
No. More for accessibility variances, which I don't feel proud of asking for. So it was understandable.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good lesson.
And I think sometimes those possibilities of waivers are kind of pitched as incentives, right? So like, oh, if we could actually get a developer to come, if only they could do X, Y, Z, and then make an argument that it's not going to be harmful, make a convincing argument that it's not going to cause harm, then they could, then go the extra five feet so that they could get another whole story and house that many more people or what have you. So, all part of the process. It's sidebar. I just heard a lecture from a woman who's an architect and an attorney. Her name is Sarah Bronin, and she has founded an organization called the National Zoning Atlas, where she's she and her team are documenting zoning regulations across the country, and they are getting into town by town what the zoning regulations are, and noting how many different zones and like how are they applied, and they're really reading the meat of different communities' zoning proposals. And she makes an argument that less is more, right? And that there are communities in our country that have no zoning, and that may not be great either. But
Like Hadley?
I don't know where Amherst falls in there. But okay, moving on.
My
Lindsay,
next one was on page 31.
okay, I've got a 27 and 29. Let's see, storefront assembly on page 27. It's too narrow in the modern Maine. I think it needs to match the bay width. If we are going to propose or provide the possibility of contemporary architecture, that we should provide the possibility for an all glass storefront, fully glazed ground floor. So maybe that storefront assembly should match the required bay width, which is 40 feet. Page 28, anyone?
I guess so yeah, because traditional matches the bay width, the modern Maine is half, downtown village is half. Like, I'm wondering if some of that is that scaling down that you're talking about?
But I think like 11 East Pleasant, I think, it has this like fully glazed ground floor, might not be permitted. Like, I walked it, I think it's 39 feet. It's the width of that building, right? And so you wouldn't be able to have a full glass storefront assembly.
But if are we wanting to change the bay width?
No,
To
I think
reduce that?
I would propose changing the storefront assembly to make it as wide as the bay.
Okay. And your previous comment about trying to reduce the modulation
Was
Like-
specific to the downtown neighborhood zone,
Okay.
but it might fall into other zones as well. I'm not sure how y'all feel about it.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting to think about kind of how they're making that transition happen architecturally, and if that's part of their thinking.
Yeah.
Like that.
Um,
No, I agree. I mean, I think this falls into the category of less is more. So like give people more flexibility, which is part of my complaint for the roof category. Or sorry, the materials category, but that's fine. I can wait.
Oh yeah, we're getting there. Okay, 29. In the modern Maine, this is so fine too, fine grain, but I was saying consider adding text that says projection or recession to differentiate ground from upper levels. So on their second paragraph under modern Main Street. And then I'll also note that modern Maine does not have a requirement to differentiate the top. And I don't mind that, but I'm just pointing it out. Because then fast forward to page 31, where Lindsay, I know you have a comment, but I'll just throw this out there, that on the roofs, I would ask to strike the last sentence from modern Maine and not require a horizontal projection on the modern Maine to allow the facade just to continue without a cap to create a shadow line. Do you want to pick up from there, Lindsay?
Nibbling on dinner while we're talking. That's why I keep going off camera. So I'm pretty surprised that the traditional Main Street has under materials only masonry.
Mm,
Brick is masonry, so I'm not sure why they're differentiating that. But yeah, so like even in places where there's historic districts, it's typically like a percentage of masonry, not 100%.
mhm.
And so I think it would be helpful to provide some flexibility in materials. I think having predominantly masonry is makes sense,
Yeah.
but I feel like an 80% would be more appropriate to give people flexibility to provide some alternate material for cladding, um, that provides an accent and differentiation. I also had concern about the traditional Main Street roof, saying that it must be flat or low sloped. I don't know what low slope means. It's not specifically stated, but in the example that they show in the image in the top right, I mean,
Mhm.
probably that tower would be considered a low slope roof, but like that's pretty subjective.
Yeah.
So um maybe like they have pitches, like roof pitches listed in the downtown village and downtown neighborhood.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, I don't think telling like limiting the roof to being flat um in those areas makes a whole lot of sense to me, but especially given the image and that like we're trying to create this modularity and this um like rhythm and differentiation. But maybe just having a roof pitch referenced
Mhm, mhm.
for the low slope option.
No, that's
So
very
Lindsay, I have a question with both materials and that. I appreciate what you're saying. Just going back to materials, to provide more flexibility, my question is, are there any materials we would not like to see that we would exclude from the material list? I guess is one question.
Their list for the other locations, like the modern Main Street, so it says brick, masonry, fiber cement panels, brick veneer, masonry veneer, metal siding that is not excessively reflective or glare producing. I think that that's a great list. I mean, I don't think they need to word it so with so many different ways of saying brick and masonry, but I would say masonry, fiber cement, metal panel, those seem like viable options. Wood is tricky because it wears. Um, we've seen that on some of our downtown buildings, and it can be really challenging to try to protect it adequately from weathering in ways that are not desirable.
Mhm.
But I certainly think that fiber cement and metal should be considered
Yeah, I mean,
viable
as an
materials.
example, the Kuhn Riddle designed building on the Hastings block has a metal panel stair tower,
Exactly.
right?
Mhm.
Which is, I think, really well done and respectful of the
Mhm.
scale and the color
Right. I was thinking of that too.
and a stucco finish or some kind of other smooth
Mhm.
panel. Um,
And that's true at the
and stone's not even mentioned, which is curious. Although I guess maybe it's me.
that's masonry, yeah. And there are a lot like actually terracotta and limestone are also masonry. So I would assume they're broadening it to include those, but I think it's worth asking that question. Because those do provide some really great variation in materials other than brick. Like I'm thinking of the Amherst College and Missions Building, 55 South Pleasant Street, which
Mhm.
was done about 15 years ago. And there's terracotta cladding on the addition. And then there's stucco. I believe it's stucco. And then on the original historic part of the building with a stone base, like plinth.
Mhm.
Um, and it's really beautiful. Like I think that the combination materials, the terracotta like really picks up the brick color, and then the stucco is just kind of a clean accent and way of kind of referencing the like white clapboard traditional New England housing. Um, so I don't know. I mean, I think, I mean, we wouldn't want to see a vinyl siding. I wouldn't. I don't really ever want to see vinyl siding, but it's part of our reality, and some of it's okay. But I think for a like commercial building, it's probably not the best option.
Mhm.
I don't think clapboard siding is probably all that desirable, but at the same time, like I could imagine it done in a way that's I wouldn't want to assume that it's not. Like I think like shiplap siding can look nice, or some of that type of more modern, clean line.
Well, circling back to what you started with, which was a percentage,
Mhm.
that might
Right.
be an interesting way to frame it, that there's a primary material,
Exactly.
is masonry, period, and don't need to define with a list what all of those masonry options
Mhm.
are, and then say, and then have a secondary material available.
Mhm.
Because I think once you start listing, you do kind of run into this problem. Like in the modern Maine, they don't list weather treated wood, which can be problematic. But I think, and in downtown Village, they list painted wood, but there are other ways to treat it. So once you start getting into that level of specificity, you
Mhm.
run into a list that you have to constantly maintain.
Mhm.
So maybe it's more like a primary material masonry and then provide a percentage and secondary material. And maybe there's a suggested list, but it's not definitive. I don't know how to handle that.
I think another item here is how water is being managed, and I didn't see that anywhere, but when it comes to roofs,
mhm.
water is a big issue and a big part of its job, water management. So thinking about, you know, the use of gutters, scuppers, sort of like roof drainage, and not so much like from a standpoint of I'd like to see this type of gutter or scupper or downspout, but more of a like, let's make sure that our water is being properly directed away from the pedestrian walkways and not causing problems, that water causes, like whether
Mhm.
it's dripping or ice building up or weathering materials. Just I don't know. I feel like from a design standpoint, that's a more functional than aesthetic consideration. Um, but I just think, ensuring that the water is being properly managed and moved away from the building and pedestrian way is an important piece.
So glad you brought that up. Thank you. Okay. Moving forward, any comments? 32, ground story, upper story fenestration. Or 33. I had an issue on page 33 with upper story fenestration spacing. I think specifically and only in the modern main that we could just delete that text altogether. It's too restrictive. Contemporary construction allows the facade to disengage from the structure. So if you're using steel or concrete structure or CLT, C11 East Pleasant Street, right? Like the windows don't necessarily align with the structural bay. And I think that's a real character of the more traditional parts of downtown, but it shouldn't be a requirement of the modern Maine if we're going for contemporary construction.
I agree. I kind of have an issue with this whole thing, but
Say more.
I just think it's too restrictive. I certainly think that it's important to have an order and a balance and a, set of datums throughout the building and alignment, but I don't think it needs to always be that the windows are vertically or horizontally aligned. But that's just getting a little too specific, I think.
So there'd be some designs where design-wise, there would be a different approach.
Yeah, I mean, there's lots of ways to create a rhythm where you can see that there's a datum or an alignment that's held, an organization to the fenestration, but it doesn't always that can depart from
Yes.
having things being vertically or horizontally aligned.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It just feels restrictive.
Yeah.
It's such an interesting challenge. We haven't had like a form-based before. And you see them and you deal with them, but once you start on a path of defining, like I don't know where the words is. Yeah, I find it very, very restrictive. And it's an interesting thing to think of some future design review board measuring the percentages of aperture versus mass and saying, provide this documentation, you're off by 10%.
I mean, that is kind of already where we're at with energy code.
Yeah.
So that's what I mean. There's just so many different restrictions and requirements. It just gets really cumbersome.
Yeah.
Design grievances.
Rooftop mechanical equipment, page 34. I just made myself a note is like define the screening as viewed from where.
Right.
Mhm.
Like, for example, the building behind the Oyster Bar, that mechanical equipment is screened technically, but you see it really,
Yeah.
it's really, really visible and unfortunate.
Right. So we need to choose some strategy. Do we mean from the sidewalk, from the center of the street, from adjacent buildings? Like what's the goal there with the screening?
And what is the screening? Like, does it, is it how much does it actually shield? Is it integrated into the design of the building?
Yeah.
Are the architects local enough that they can actually see the building?
Oh, interesting.
That's an interesting point.
Well, there's another person. Okay, looking right along. Any comments on page 36? Site design, length of frontage without pedestrian passage to interior or rear of the lot. I do feel that 150 feet is too long for the downtown village and downtown neighborhood. Again, like thinking of that neighborhood scale, I think it's unlikely that somebody would max out, would combine lots and max it out and all that would happen. But I do think that there's something to be said for breaking down the overall scale of those more residential adjacent parcels.
Yeah.
And again, I don't know what the right number is, but 150 feet feels too long to me.
Mhm.
Okay.
Maybe 100.
Was the bay width? I don't remember, but yeah, maybe 100.
Probably like half of what you're looking at there, or 75. Not 70, 125. So like 100. Oh wait, 100 would be 2/3. So
100 is 2/3, yeah. Um,
just like in general, stepping down the overall
yeah,
in those zones a little more.
yeah. Where was my previous? I've lost my previous note about the bay width of the downtown village, downtown neighborhood. And who has the next comment? Page 37, 38, 39. I don't pick up again until page 43.
I don't have anything.
Okay. I actually don't have any issue with the lighting guidelines. I go with everything, but I don't know where to park information about bird safe glazing design and lighting practices. It's not addressed here at all, and I've been kind of deeply influenced by some research that's been happening at UMass that's been tracking bird collisions on campus. And I know that there's a lot of very low vis, high impact practices that designers can take that reduce bird collisions. And those happen both with the design of the glazing itself, but also lighting practices and locations of vegetation and things. So just flagging that I'd like to see some reference to bird safe design.
Yeah, absolutely. My son just wrote it. Made a book about that topic in first
Seriously?
grade. Yeah.
Amazing.
There's a little picture and it's like out of nowhere, this building shows up or something like that.
Oh,
Poor bird doesn't make it. But they're teaching it.
good. Okay, so we should include it.
Yeah, it's a
Definitely.
thing. It's a real thing.
And then the next, there's this whole section on sign guidelines, and I think that what I'd like to see as somebody who, is part of enforcing these guidelines in town is that Article 8 either gets merged into this package, or basically that things get consolidated.
Mhm.
That And so concludes volume 2. Do we all need a
I
stretch?
wanted to say I did have a thought about signage.
Mhm.
It's just that like maybe window signage alone shouldn't be recommended. I've just noticed how can be really challenging to read signage on windows.
Yeah.
And I think maybe trying to encourage, that's pretty rare that there isn't another sign, but there are times where that happens and it can just be really hard to see the sign. So I didn't see that anywhere in here that it's required to have a secondary sign to a window sign, but something I've been thinking about.
Yeah, yeah. Or rather that maybe the language is that the window sign should always uh, complement a, a building or
Mm-hmm.
other sign. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And as far as the volume 3, I didn't spend a lot of time on it. I did just flip through it, and I think overall it seems fine, but I don't have any actual feedback to give.
Okay.
I don't either.
I have relatively few. I do think that the various widths and subzones that they defined are clear. I appreciate the material and textural options that are provided, but also trying to provide some consistency in town, which would be really welcome.
Mhm.
The lot transition zone, like if you look at where do those dimensions go? Like pages 6, 7, and 8. We don't have a lot transition zone in very many places, only the widest sidewalks. And this might be a hot take, but I'm wondering about taking bicycle parking out of that lot transition zone labeled as B, zone B on page 6. Because it never occurs without also a furnishings and utility zone. And I think keeping bikes out of the throughway, even crossing or somebody hops on their bike and they're on the sidewalk for a little bit, is a good idea. It's safer and it's kind of cleaner, if you will. So it doesn't eliminate an option for bicycles. It just keeps them from having to cross the sidewalk with a bicycle.
So you're saying to move it over or eliminate it?
Yeah, there's a table on page 9
Mm-hmm.
that says that in that lot transition zone that bicycle parking can happen along with public seating and street trees and planters and so on. And I just think that, it can happen just on the other side of the sidewalk in the furnishing and utility zone.
Mm-hmm. That makes sense.
It's possible on page 19 that outdoor dining could be allowed in an area that's only 4 feet wide. Guess that's enough for like a cafe table and chairs. It's pretty skinny.
It is. I think you could do like a 2-person table.
Hmm. Yeah, and I mean, I guess that the option for some kind of outdoor seating and dining is a real benefit for visibility and enjoyment of some of our downtown places. So I just pointed that out to myself. I shouldn't have even said it out loud. And then I again, I don't know where to put this, but I was wondering if is there anything besides a Jersey barrier?
I know they're really unpleasant to look at.
And if we're going to use them, yeah, can we require maintenance and replacement when they get gnarly? During COVID, they were all painted and they were brightly colored,
Yeah.
and they've all started to chip and fade, and it provides a safe space on the pedestrian side, but it doesn't look great.
Yep.
Are there alternatives to that?
The parklets that they have provided, you know, that these kind of decks that they move in that kind of have a built-in,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
um,
those look nice.
those do look nice.
Where does it even talk about them?
It doesn't, street enhancements, outdoor dining.
Yeah.
The example is in the furnishing and utility zone. I couldn't find a place where it was about taking over parking spaces.
Mhm.
It's probably in here. I just didn't.
42-inch high compliant boundary on all sides facing street. So I would say that Jersey barriers aren't typically that high, are they?
No.
3 foot minimum buffer with crash rated planters side facing oncoming traffic. I mean, to me, it seems like Jersey barriers don't meet that criteria.
Where are you looking?
Page 20,
Page
the
20.
bottom under
Yeah.
F and G.
But yeah, and this is in a parking area. Otherwise, it would be used for parking.
Mhm.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I think maybe making a note of maintenance of really any materials, but certainly painted structures.
Mm.
Do you want to add the raised platforms as an option?
I think it does list that.
No, it does.
Thought I saw it. Allowable furniture.
Mm. Yeah, it doesn't specifically define the surface. It just says without changing the curb line of the street and that accessible access threshold services and furnishings. So I think it doesn't define it away. It's possible within the definition, but it doesn't demand that it have a deck.
Mhm.
All right. I had some questions about bioretention, but I don't really know how to answer them. I was really hoping that it would be required for groundwater management, and it seems to be required in some places and optional in others. But that was my last comment, and that falls on page 36. How did we do? Really appreciate the close read that you provided. It's, I think, important to have a lot of knowledgeable and wise eyes on this package of standards. Is there any other discussion or points about the standards that didn't come to light that you'd like to provide now before we kind of close this conversation?
I think one takeaway other than just the like access
Yeah.
to anybody, everybody, is the less is more concept, and just like the importance of trying to not be too restrictive.
Yeah. Okay. I think that these being just comments are recorded and can be provided to whoever comes next, the department, the consultants, and on to the planning board. I don't know that we need to vote on anything. We've provided, as members of the design review board, our feedback. And Jacinta, you will, obviously you're packaging all of this up. Appreciate that. Do we have, I know, I recognize that it's 6 o'clock, but do we have a minute to get our thoughts on record about how we feel the DRB with this big change pending to the downtown design standards? Should the role of the DRB change? Should we become a binding decision-making board or continue to just be a recommending board? Should the DRB go away and be folded into become a subcommittee of the planning board or the zoning board of appeals, for example? Karen?
Given all that's being proposed, I think the DRB should have an important role.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's placed is, I have a question about. The zoning board is the board that really has the most power in terms of making these decisions. And I wonder if they would be more aware of our recommendations if we were part of that process.
Yeah.
More directly, I guess is what I'm saying.
Mm-hmm.
Where they're more aware of what's being suggested.
Definitely be curious about what that looks like. Like that idea of being a subcommittee, like how would that change our operation? And I also agree with what Karen said, that it would be nice to have more of a binding role and voice. And not just be one like part. Sorry, I'm moving around. I have to prepare for that select board meeting in a few minutes. But yeah, just having a more integral part in the overall approval process.
Yeah. I mean, it seems if we were a subcommittee, we would have more direct contact with them, and it would be harder to sort of dismiss some of the recommendations or, not be aware of them.
Mm-hmm.
I also wonder if it may be easier for the applicants to have, a more integral approach to the approval process.
One-stop shopping.
Yeah.
Would it be easier on town staff to show up at fewer evening meetings?
Yeah.
I mean, it's an
I'm
interesting
curious.
question. It's an interesting question. I do feel that if this is going to become, and something at this level of specificity is going to become law, that they're going to need some folks that are really tuned into the nuances of the code, because we still want to have good design in town, and just simply putting these limits on paper doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be compatible and be beautiful and fit in. So I would like to see the DRB having a stronger voice as well. And I don't know, I think we asked this at the last meeting. And I don't know, just if you learned anything about it, but like what even is the process of changing the DRB's responsibility? Or should we just flag that for the town council to consider along with these, the long process of approving the standards, also reconsidering how the DRB is enforcing them?
I think with regard to changing the DRB's sort of, I guess, leverage, if you will, in becoming a binding body. When I brought it up with the planning director, it was a little bit like, oh, but wait, let's just back up for a second and get through the design review standards. So I've heard varying opinions since I started working. Some people have said they don't want to get, they want to get rid of the DRB. I've had people say that. And I don't know where the temperature is on that. No one's sharing that with me, obviously, as the staff liaison to the DRB. But I would have to say that it would be a huge missed opportunity. And I think the town would be shooting itself in the foot to create these standards and then, go through the process of adopting them through town council, whether it's, in block or, in a volume by volume, and then not to have anyone who's skilled in these types of decisions, to not have somebody there to make those decisions and help enforce it would be a real detriment, I think. So that's something the town needs to, I think, consider. Whether or not they are considering it and how seriously they're considering it, I am not privy to those conversations. So that I can't say. Please read between the lines with my answer.
We got you. Karen.
Well, perhaps one way to present it and define it is we would act as an advisory board to the zoning board and sort of redefining how we're understood might be helpful, because I do think that would be our function, to be advisory board.
Yeah, and I think the risk there is that we're kind of defined, well, we are defined as an advisory board at the moment, and there's nothing that we say is binding. We make recommendations to either the building commissioner or the planning board, and they get to do the enforcing, right? So they can choose to listen or not. And so I think what we would like to do is advise with teeth or right with to respect the expertise, the time of the committee and the staff to spend time on this board. And if the design review board, if the design standards are going to turn into this huge document, then I think we want some people that are really invested in the carrying those forward. So,
and that's where being a subcommittee may be a better option.
Yeah, or maybe there's some other structure that we're not considering, but that would provide that opportunity. Yeah. And I take Lindsay's point too about maybe having a kind of a closer fit structurally that would make communication about all of these new standards a little bit smoother for the folks who are applying.
I think the overlap is obvious between the zoning board and the design review board. It's just getting those who make the decisions and, those who go through this process to kind of like start integrating those two things, right? And start figuring out how to make that work, because the zoning board can only do so much, right? When I work with them, they're thinking we're just here to approve the use. Why do we have to talk about, the design and why do we have to make a comment about this? And they're not necessarily, the right people to make those decisions.
Right.
their purview is zoning. So I do think the subcommittee option is, a path forward. It's just whether, it's convincing other people to go on that journey with you and to see the benefits of choosing that path. So
I apologize, but I have to go because I need to get ready for this other meeting.
All right, and so if you're running, then we don't have enough time to review the minutes of the last one, so we can of our last meeting, so we can shelve that approval till the next time we meet, which is
it's in July, but we do have some homework to do, at least I do, and as far as just figuring out terms and expirations, and we didn't really get to touch upon that. So
yeah, and I think maybe those conversations about terms and renewals might happen more one-on-one than in the public forum. But can we just name the date that we would be meeting
sure, 1 second.
before Lindsay runs?
Hold on, Lindsay.
Summer tends to be a quiet time for us, but we should at least have the date on our calendars.
Here we go. 2026 meeting schedule. So the next meeting is scheduled to be July 20th.
July 20th. Okay.
I'm not certain I will be in town. That's okay. I mean, summer's a strange time for everyone.
They are indeed.
Okay,
And the
I
one
have to
after that is
run.
August
Okay.
7th.
Bye,
Lindsay.
bye,
Thank
Lindsay.
you for your
Bye,
feedback.
thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, we have it on the calendar Monday, July 20th, 4:30. And Karen, does the week before that, are you in town? Like, would we consider now moving it?
Could we do this by email for this reason? When I rush to get here, I don't have my phone, so I have no idea what my life consists of at this point.
That's
Hear you.
okay.
That's great. We'll take care of that by email then.
Okay, thank you.
All right. And I will just put it on the table that in the fall, I have a class on Monday evenings. But can't meet on Mondays any longer.
Starting in September.
So we can maybe start thinking about, it's a lot, look, September's a long ways off, but we could start thinking about another day.
And Thursday evening, I have a series going.
Okay.
That would make it difficult, so.
Okay, so not Monday, not Thursday. And we'll collect this information, just in if you're doing a scheduling email, we might collect near term and long term info.
Sure.
Okay, great. That was epic. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dropped off early, and to you, Karen, and to you, Jacinta, thanks for your comments tonight. Let's adjourn.
Okay, have a good evening.
Thank
Good
you.
evening. Feel better, Karen. Bye.
Thank you.
Oh yeah, Karen.
It's